Okay, tonight, Sunday night, I've got a weird one for you. Um, if we want to break free from social atomization, social engineering, and throw off the yoke of the people who are, trying to get us to do certain things for their benefit rather than ours, the masters of the world, if we want to try to break free from that, we have to look for an alternative um, form of organization. And one thing that could be helpful is something that is exogenous to their power, something that is endogenous to you, and that's your family and your family history. You don't really have any power over the history of your family, and neither do the people who are trying to control your life. The stuff has already happened, it's over and done with. So it's useful, I think, to learn where you come from, put your family members in historical context, and that'll kind of give you, a better idea about where you are and who your enemies are, who that you owe it to your ancestors to revenge yourself upon them. So, what I've got for you, by way of example, are my grandparents. They're all dead, but these are two of my grandparents. Now, what they have in common is that they're both Anglo-German Protestants. They have fairly light colored hair. They both got blue eyes. They're light complected. They don't really look like me, but these are, in fact, two of my grandparents. Um, in both cases, their ancestors came to the United States, I think, mostly sometime between 1800 and 1830. Some of the English people, I think, were probably here before that, but some of them came a little bit later than that, actually. But for the most part, they were German settlers who left Württemberg and came to this country. They didn't open a shop, they didn't open a bank, they didn't open a factory, they didn't have any of that shit. They started a small farm and took care of themselves, and raised families, and they were country people. I doubt that any people before this generation had too much of an education. Um, this gentleman here, his direct paternal ancestor, was in the United States Civil War, fought on the Confederate side, volunteered, was captured, was ransomed, was captured, was ransomed, was captured, was ransomed 3 times in total, and finally demobilized. So, none of these people owned slaves. They didn't have enough money for that. They were farmers, country people, again. So, just learning simple things like that about your own family history, for example, might have come into conflict with the idea that the Southern society was a slave-owning culture and that everybody was fighting in order to preserve their slaves. It's not really the case, at least for my family. So these are Anglo-German Protestants, and that's two of my 4 grandparents. These people, these are two of them. Sorry for the glare on that. These are my 2 other grandparents, and as you can see, they're much more darkly complected. They both got brown eyes and black hair. My grandmother, she is mostly French and Spanish. So her ancestors would have come to this country in the late 1600s through Mexico City before traveling into today what is the United States of America. The man, my grandfather, so you could call her a Hispanic if you really were, persuaded to, but I don't. I'm not sure that she has any real Amerindian, like Central American ancestry. She's basically, all European for the most part. The man is a mixture of late arriving English settlers and also indigenous American. So that was in the family history, and then I verified it with the DNA testing results. So that's why he looks like he does. These people were Catholics. These people were also country people. They lived on a farm, but just like we typically know the difference between Catholics and Protestants, these people didn't make as much money as the Protestant farmers. So they often had to take on extra jobs and work outside of the household, but of course they did some farming activities as well. So these are the two different backgrounds that I come from, and in both cases they were totally, completely, utterly apolitical. In researching my family history, I found not even one example of anybody ever even becoming involved with local politics, much less state or federal politics. These people all died within 100 miles of where they were born. They didn't move very often, although they did move a couple times during their life. They were only ever married once. They were married a long time. They were married when they died. They both had big families, eight children on each side. What I gather from all this, well, I guess I want to stress the not poverty, but very low levels of wealth, not subsistence farming, the next step above that. But just learning stuff about your family history, completely explodes the idea of white privilege. These people were very poor. Nobody was giving anything to them. They had to work for everything that they got. And if they wanted to live around people of their race and people who shared their culture and language, I don't think that there's any problem with that, and take issue with anyone who suggests it. But that's basically what everybody's being taught in schools. In the areas where both my sets of grandparents lived, there were black people in that county, but the areas were completely segregated. There was basically no integration at that time whatsoever, and I think everybody was probably better off as a result. Which, of course, you can't say any of that stuff today. But I guess what I'm trying to describe is the disconnect between your grandparents, your great grandparents, their great grandparents, basically everybody going back for 200 or 300 years, and what's been taught in the United States as gospel since the mid 1960s. I think most white people in the United States have grandparents and great grandparents like mine who were poor. People didn't give them anything. They were pretty good, honest, basic country people who were just working to try to take care of their business and not bother other people too much. But I think the more research that you do about your own family, and the more that you learn about them and just the kind of struggles and lifestyle that they went through, the less likely you're going to be, the less likely it will be that you will take shit intellectually from people who are trying to tell you your business about how to interpret your own family's history. And especially all of the white guilt and need to make reparations or any of that kind of stuff. You start learning about where your family come from, you're not going to have any truck with that. All right. Thank you for your time.